And so from there, how long did it take before you joined the sheriff's department?
Well, I stayed in construction for quite a while, and it just never fit. You know, it just didn't feel, I didn't want to go to work. So finally, one day in 2009, 2010, right around the cusp there, I decided that I was going to do what I always wanted to do and go into law enforcement.
Wow.
But I had no idea how to get started because if you don't go to a police department and get hired right there on the spot, how do you do it?
Go to a police academy?
Exactly. But how do you do that? Well, Win Job Center, which is a place that helps people get jobs. I don't know if y'all have anything like that over here where they look for careers that are open and take applicants and search for things that fit them.
Uh-huh.
Well, they had a government grant that was helping people get into law enforcement that didn't have an agency. So I signed up with them. I got approval for the grant and started the academy on my own as a self-sponsor.
Oh, wow.
So I went through the 9-week academy on my own. And then when I graduated, top of my class, I was immediately picked up by the Harrison County Sheriff's Office. So that was...
So it worked out perfect.
Worked out perfect. Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes it's
out.
not that easy. Sometimes
It's
people
not.
apply and they don't make it through the academy,
Mhm.
or they don't get picked up right away because of hiring freezes or whatever that's going on. So that was pretty fortunate.
Well, and the other part to that is since I was a self-sponsor, I didn't get paid the entire 9 weeks. I didn't have a paycheck for 9 weeks.
So being able to get picked up right away was a blessing.
Oh, it was a blessing.
Yeah, for
Big
sure.
time. And that once I was hired on with them, my life completely changed.
So
How
was
so?
it,
Tell us.
and was it everything that you were, I mean, that was your dream, right? Was to be
Oh,
in-
absolutely. I'd wanted to do that since I was a child, but as you can tell, I'm not the largest guy in the room, so it was difficult for people to see me being able to do that. You know, being able to take down people 5 times my size, and you know, it was nerve-wracking but so exciting at the same time because I was fixing to do something that a lot of kids dream about.
Right.
And I loved what I did, but it was the biggest awakening I'd ever had in my entire life. Just the first couple of weeks in training, going out with these guys and seeing what they encounter on a daily basis is insanity.
Wow.
People outside of law enforcement that, you know, and a lot of them love to criticize law enforcement, have no idea. Try to imagine that you come to work and every day, all you deal with is people at their absolute worst. The worst day of their life, that's when you're dealing with them, trying to help them. And there's so much negative that's involved in it. It's really hard to stay in a good mind space. And it's even harder not to take it home with you. So there were so many more challenges than I expected right out of the gate that I was nervous. But luckily, my next door neighbor was a senior deputy.
Oh.
So I got to converse with him and learn different ways to cope. And it definitely made a difference. And once I got used to everything, it was a whole nother world.
Yeah, I imagine that would be tough not to take it home. I could totally see that. And you know, and I've never heard of it described that way, but that totally makes sense. You're right. You're having your one day. Everybody else is having their worst day.
Mm-hmm.
And every call that you're dealing with is the worst day for that person. I've never seen it that way, but man, that's a heck of
Well, another good way to put it is
description.
y'all have been driving for quite some time, and I'm sure you've seen maybe a total of a handful of accidents in your life driving.
Yep.
Right.
And some of them were pretty bad, I guess. Imagine you see that every single day, and you're the person going to the car pulling them out.
Oh, wow.
An incident that I always remember. I was actually off duty and I was going to the store. I needed to get my drink of choice there. And before I got there, I saw a car run a stop sign. And as soon as he ran the stop sign, it was an immediate puff of white smoke, but not normal white smoke. Something looked different about it. He had crashed into a building.
Oh my gosh.
So I ran over there in my truck and hopped out and immediately could smell what the problem was. It was chlorine gas. I immediately recognized it. And as soon as I noticed that that's what it was, all I could do was try to tell everybody to get back because it wasn't normal smoke. You know, chlorine gas in the right consistency can kill you on impact.
Right.
Luckily, it was diluted enough to where it didn't immediately, so I was able to jump the fence and pull the guy out. But once I got him out, he wasn't able to stand. The gas had taken effect on him, and so we weren't able to get out of the fence. We had to sit in this fog and wait for the fire department to get there to come cut us out.
Oh my gosh! So you were inhaling this too?
They were the only ones that had the equipment
Right.
to be able to get to us. So we sat in there for about 4 or 5 minutes, and that was rough. That was my first brush with, is this it?
Am I going to
Is
make
this
it?
Right.
Yeah. And I got to the hospital. It was okay. The gentleman actually made it. It took 6 to 7 months of intensive care with a pulmonologist, and he made it. But that was definitely one of the craziest days. And that kind of thing could happen every day.
Right.
So thinking back on that experience at the sheriff's department, and now driving thousands and thousands of miles as a driver, do you think about, does that affect how you approach safety?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many things that working at the sheriff's department did to prepare me for this that I didn't even think would be, would coincide with the two, but it did. Driving 600 miles a day in a patrol car, now I'm driving 600 miles a day in a big truck.
Which is funner?
Oh, driving a big truck, for sure.
All right,
That's awesome.
Good to hear.
It's fun to be in a high-speed chase, and everybody wants to do it, but that's only fun the first couple of times, and then you realize how dangerous it really is.
Yeah.
In the big truck, all I got to do is kick back and make sure it stays between these lines, and that's it. It's so peaceful. And, the safety aspect that you were talking about, knowing a lot of the things that I learned with the sheriff's department, because we did motor carrier as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned a lot about the hazards of different situations, and it definitely taught me how to walk instead of run when it comes to an accident or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I had a trainee with me. I think it was several months back. We came upon an accident that had just happened. It was a flatbed truck hit a Jeep.
Oh.
And the flatbed truck was hauling those heavy coils, those metal coils.
Oh, wow.
Well, when they impacted, the coils came loose and ran over the truck and flattened the truck.
Oh, my goodness.
The driver of the truck was okay, but the driver of the Jeep was a different story. But instead of running up on that, I walked up while everybody else is running, and as they got close, they didn't realize there was oil everywhere, and they slipped and fell and were in the oil. So it definitely prepared me in a lot of different ways for driving a truck.
Wow.
So you're talking about how in the sheriff's department, and I just had this crazy thought that how you come upon people on their worst days. I'll just verify that if I'm ever driving somewhere and I see lights.
That's
in the
your worst
rearview
day.
mirror,
Just remember.
it all of a sudden becomes my worst day.
And, I've been pulled over, too, since then,
Yeah.
and it happens to me, too. My heart sinks. But I know I'm not doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
It's just a natural reaction to it, and that's
Yeah.
funny that you say that. Yeah.
So
But it also
even
should
though-
change your mindset, knowing that they've had a bad day constantly, always dealing, so that when you're dealing with them, be nice, be positive.
and maybe it didn't really happen to me, but people were telling me that's how they feel.
Hey, I've been pulled over many a times, but I'm never mean to the officers.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Normally they let me go.
So I would also wanted to ask you said something about not taking it home.
Yeah.
Because that's stressful, but that would be good advice for anybody in
For
any
any
job.
job.
So do you have any?
It is. It absolutely is. There's always going to be, unfortunately, negatives in anything that you do.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize with their spouse being at home, they have, I hate to say it like this, but they have their life, you have your life. Because we're gone so often that it's two completely different worlds until they collide. And when you bring negative into the house with you, the atmosphere is going to change.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you intend it or not. So the best advice that I can give people is when you get home, the first thing you should do, obviously, is just hug your family, but pick one positive thing, one really cool thing that you saw on the road that month that really stands out, and tell them a story about it. Once you're able to do that, it's almost like a switch in your brain turns off from negative to positive. I know it sounds crazy, but if you just get one positive story out, it can change your headspace. Because you've got your family who's missed you and running up and wanting to hug you, and now you're telling them a positive story, and it's almost like the negative just melts away.
And they're asking questions about the story, so now you're diving into it more. I could totally see that.
And I know that's not always possible. Your partner is there to help. And save that story for later.
When the kids aren't there.
Right, for sure. No, that's such great advice.
And not necessarily just for the kids not being there, but give yourself a moment to kind of acclimate to being back home and try to test the waters and see, how's your partner feeling? Is something going on in their world, and you throw a bunch of negative on top of it, and all it does is make the situation worse. If you start with a positive, it's a lot easier to work your way through than if you start with a negative.
True statement.
I totally agree with that.
And that's great advice.
Great advice.
It's worked for me, but it hadn't always been that way. When my prior career with my previous marriage, and you see there's a lot of priors and previous there.
Right.
It didn't always work like that, and I did bring a lot of it home with me, and I saw how
it affected it.
The negative affected the whole atmosphere of my family. And I just made a conscious decision when I started doing this. Night gave me an opportunity to change my whole life around. It was up to me to take it. So I did. And I changed how I saw things and what I brought home with me. And ever since then, my life has been completely different.
Thank you for watching that clip. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more clips like that, please click here.
Or if you'd like to check out a full episode, click here.
And don't forget to subscribe to us on
YouTube.